And this is where a lot of companies get in trouble, where they say, well, look, Logan, I'm really good at sales. I just need more leads. And my first thing I always said to them was, oh, that sounds amazing. Have you tried Home Advisor? Oh, no. Well, those are bad leads. I'm really good at sales with good leads. I'm like, oh, hold on. So you're really good at sales if the sale has already been done for you. Is that right? Well, no. And I'm like, okay, you know what I call that over here? Order taking. That is not sales. That is simply a warm referral. That is me saying, hey, Chris, my youngest brother, TJ, builds ponds. And then Chris goes, wow, that sounds amazing. Let me reach out to him. Hey, TJ, I heard you build ponds. Can you come over here? And I would like for you to build a pond for me. This is what I'm thinking. This is my budget. And then TJ takes that information and goes over there and goes, yeah, I fucking closed that guy.
I closed him.
I closed him. Like, I got him. I did this. And it's like, no, man, he bought already. But that's, the referral is essentially the marketing. So it's the understanding of the relationship between the two that is, I think, what throws a lot of people off, because they do the marketing stuff that gets them quick action, signing up for Home Advisor, Angie, doing like hardcore promotional offers, which, if the economics work out, it works out. But a lot of business owners that are, not in the contracting space, they do Groupon. Well, what they do is they put out Groupon, which says, look, if you buy 2 massages, you get the second one free. And then they get mad when that person is not there, doesn't then sign back up. Well, yeah, because you just gave away, 2 massages for $100 total, when in reality, each one's $100. Of course, they're not coming back because they were here to just get, their $50 massage. To be giving us a countdown, and he stopped at 7. So I guess we're on now.
Let's get it.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to CGTV. I'm Logan.
Chris Livingston, how are you guys doing?
Do us a favor, jumping in. Instead of doing hashtag live, hashtag replay, let's just go scale of 1 to 10. How you feeling tonight?
That's awesome.
It's middle of August. We're already, coming up on the back half of the year. We're already past the back half of the year. So now it's, stuff is starting to like really settle in for the year, and everybody's years are kind of shaping out to see what it really, all the shit that they wanted to start off with, is it actually following through? So let us know how you doing. 1 to 10, can't use 7, that's a cop-out. Chris and I were just in Costa Rica for the week. Learned a lot of stuff.
How are you feeling 1 to 10 today?
Like a 4.
Okay. Want to give some context why you feel like a 4, or?
There's a lot of stuff. I mean, we just went to a conference in Costa Rica, and essentially what you do is you go there and it affirms the stuff that you're doing right, and it also widens the gap of all the stuff that you're not doing right. And it becomes overwhelming, where now, like I spent the day, I'm back in the office today. I didn't even spend the day in the office. I spent the day up in a conference room by myself, working through a lot of different things. And what ends up happening is, especially in like the marketing world, and I talk to a lot of people about this, but when it comes to marketing, we have, like in the remodeling world, the contracting world, you have this battle per se where you have clients that are, well, that's a lot of money, I don't want to deal with all that stuff. Like, there's a lot of that stuff that goes on. I also feel in the marketing world, we have this battle, which is the product that we produce and do, it changes 8 times a day. Meaning the way that Google picks what they like, what they're going to show, stuff like that, that changes all the time. And that would be the equivalent of, imagine you're an electrician, right? Jessica's on here, she works for an electrical company. You're an electrician, and the way to troubleshoot a house changes every single day. So not only do you need to talk to your people about that, educate them, tell them, hey, it's worth the money, all that stuff, but on top of that, you need to keep up with all of the stuff that's happening. So it now comes back to, and we talked about this as a team, I think before we left, where some people are frustrated, like, well, should we have been doing this the whole time? And it's like, look, guys, this marketing world is always going to be like that. It's changing faster and faster every day. So half our job is literally just understanding what the hell is going on so we can keep up with it.
Yeah, because even if you go back and like look at articles or books and all that kind of stuff too, like all those things are dated so quickly because it's just talking about what's currently happening right now and maybe the successes that have happened from a certain situation, but it is always changing. All the things, all the resources you have online are very much the ones that are getting the most traction are the ones that are the newest and most up to date.
Yeah, like we were down there and they had a lot of heavy hitters at this conference, and who they had there is they had a couple sharks. You had Damon John, you had Kevin Harrington, who was like the original shark, and you actually had him like said, Kevin, come have dinner with us, and he spent about an hour just sitting there with 5 of us having dinner, just talking about what it's like to work on Shark Tank and the deals that he's done on Shark Tank. And he's the guy, if you don't know who he is, if you're old enough, I mean, we're 31, 32, and we remember it, As Seen on TV, he owns, I think he sold it, but he owned As Seen on TV. So like, that's the caliber of people, and he's sitting down and just talking with us. But at this conference, that's the people that they brought in, and I've never been somewhere where they had bigger guests like that they said, because typically with Kevin Harrington, I'd imagine,
it's a headliner. And
it's a headliner, keynote speaker, 2 hours, shut the place down. He just had like the 10:05 to 10:55 slot, like exactly. 50 minutes. Same with Damon John, same with Jesse Itzler, whose wife owns Spanx or just sold Spanx. And then there's other people that are big in the marketing world that you probably don't know, but they have a measly, 200, 300,000 followers on social media.
Yeah, and measly, $100 million company.
Yeah, like one of the guys down there co-owns Radio Shack and Pier 1 Imports. And he just got he was on the bus with us.
Yeah, exactly.
So we were joking man, I wonder how Radio Shack's doing these days. I'm like, well, he flew coach as well, so it must not be going all that well. But it turns out his talk was actually probably the most impactful one for us as a whole. So it was good to see all that, but it also these conferences always shed light on what you need to be doing more of. And unfortunately, in our world, we have guys there that are saying, hey, this is what Google is going to be doing in 2 years. So if you're not on this boat right now, then you're behind, which is good because it always makes sure that we're innovative, we're ahead of the curve, we're tip of the spear, which is what everybody wants to be. But it also now puts in our brain, okay, do we try to do all this stuff for Google today or 2 years down the line, or do we figure out an in-between of where to go? So it's like, it never stops. It feels like this uphill battle at times, and it's like, it's a lot. It just feels overwhelming, and like coming back from it, that's kind of how I feel, which is both good and bad.
There was the Google guru, I actually don't remember his name, but the guy with the long hair, you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
One thing he said was, in this world right now, consumers have to find a marketing company they truly they believe in that marketing company. Because if you are, right now, consumers, if they're just thinking they just want to buy leads, if you're just selling leads, you're the first on the chopping block. Because it's so variable, right? It's like
transactional as well.
Exactly. And there's no real opportunity to really take care of customers if you are simply just selling leads, because you will now become commoditized. Leads have become a commodity in that way. So it was really cool to also think. I actually had a conversation with somebody today. I won't mention any names, but they asked me today about the recession. I thought to myself, at this entire conference, no one mentioned the recession once. It's like they really had this abundance mindset, recognizing, okay, maybe there's a small dip right now. We're going to get out of that. We're not worried about that. But it was impactful to think that the thought process, like the wavelength people were on, was so much higher than just kind of thinking maybe through like a limited or a fixed mindset. So that was pretty cool.
I'm a little more open about talking about this stuff.
And I'm not saying you can't talk about it, but I'm just saying, but it wasn't like this fear idea of like.
Oh, no, I look at it more so as something that is telling you it's time to adjust or adapt. It's not are we going to get crushed? It's more of, okay, if people were buying $1 million renovations and now they're buying $500,000 renovations, what needs to happen to adjust to that? And same with our side of things. Like we're making adjustments on certain things, and that's kind of what my takeaways were from this conference. One of them, just kind of jumping into it, was Damon John made a comment at the very end of his talk. And
we'll talk about who Damon John is.
Damon John owns FUBU. He's on Shark Tank.
He owns Bomba Socks.
Yeah, Bomba Socks is he's not as well known for that, I would say, but he's mostly known for the Shark Tank side of things. Oh, I didn't even realize that Mike put on a Shark Tank background. But one of the things he said at the end was, look, at the end of the day, you need to do what's best for the business. And he said, I have people on my team that, you know, like as a salesperson, I need you to be good at social media, because if you're going to work at a company of mine, social media is a big part of it. You need to be good at social media. So he's like, I have people that I've known for 20, 30 years that are salespeople that are great, but because they will not adapt to social media, I had to let them go. He's like, I'll let them go, and then I'll say, hey, I'm so sorry it didn't work out. I'll see you tomorrow at the barbecue at my house. So it was this whole idea of, look, at the end of the day, the business is the business, and it needs to be fed the right stuff. And I fall victim to this all the time where, a lot of us entrepreneurs, we use the business to fix and fulfill our own personal crap. I have this firm belief, because I've done it myself, that a lot of the people that are doing 75 hard, they do it because it's a control thing. And I'm a control person. I love control. I'm good at control in my mind. Meaning when something's out of my control, like stuff starts to break down. So I like to retain control. Well, when we do 75 hard, and I've done it, it's because, at least for me, there's stuff that's going on in the business that I feel like I'm not in control. But it's easier to work out twice a day, to eat on a diet, to have a gallon of water, take a photo, no drinking. Like, that's easier than actually fixing the problem of the business. So it's a control thing as a whole. So instead of doing the right things for the business, I do the things that are good for Logan, and I'm like, well, I'm doing 75 hard, I'm in great shape. Now the business is not doing the right stuff, but I'm okay. And that's what Damien was talking about, where he was bringing up, look, you need to do the right thing for the business and have the right things in place. And it's okay if you've known somebody for a long time and they're just no longer the right fit. So for me over here at CGN, like what I did all day today up there in the conference room by myself was go through and, we're going to make some shifts within the company. And a big part of that is understanding and laying out what positions are needed, not who are the people on the team right now. That will come, but it's more so, what are the positions that this company needs, right? Are we doing things in a certain way because we go, well, for example, to put Chris on the spot, Chris loves sales. Chris, just like every other salesperson, hates putting notes into HubSpot, right? It's because it's the minuscule task that has a huge impact. It's so small and it doesn't really matter, and it's only 5 minutes, but it's 5 minutes of discomfort, which it sucks. But if somebody moves forward, then the client success team they want to read the notes. But if Chris doesn't suck it up for 5 minutes, then it's a domino effect of everything on from there. So those are the things that I'm now going, look, I can't have Chris decide I'm not doing notes. This position calls for notes. Whether Chris wants to do it or not, that's a different conversation, but we have to have notes being put in. So I spent the day looking at what are the positions, how does the processes work together, completely removing the names, the people on the team, all that stuff away from it, and then actually having a fresh mind, because talking about this overwhelm that I feel like I have right now with the business, I spent yesterday, which is where I started this, I said, if I burn CGN to the ground and I rebuilt it today, knowing what I know, what would I change? What would I do and how would I do it? And it was hard to not put the people on the team to go, well, Chris does this, this, and this, so that's a perfect position for him. I'm going, screw that. This is how many media people I need. This is how many website people I need. This is how many SEO people I need. This is how many people in sales that I need. This is this. So it's putting those positions in there, and then now what that does is it's hard. It's hard to
separate the two.
It's hard to separate the two. It's hard to go, what is the salesperson's role without thinking of Chris? And it's natural, but that's what I spent the day doing today. And then from there, what I will do is then go to each person and say, hey, look, these are the positions on the team. What do you think about this? Where do you see yourself fitting in? A lot of it, it's like, it's not
all
that different.
All those people who be doing websites.
Right, but it's like different roles. And it's like, hey, there's this web person and there's this web person. They actually are doing two different functions. One's more front of the house, one's more back of the house, right? And it's not because we have two web devs is ironically the same number of positions I have. It's because these are the positions that we actually would need. So based on that, which position, do you guys want these? Because if one of you guys, if you both say we both want the first one, but nobody wants the second one, well, that doesn't work. So that means that I got to hire one of you for the first one, then I got to go out and find somebody new for the second one because it is position and process over the people.
Yeah, and even going deeper into that, it is so impactful for the individual because I know that they want to succeed, right? One of the big takeaways for me was the idea that, I think Jesse Itzler said this, but more is not better, but better is better. And it has a lot of different places that could probably fall into, but just realizing that this is a push to get better. Like the way you just described CGN a second ago, like it was very critical of it, which I'm super critical of CGN and the people of CGN and myself as well. But at the same time, people who are watching this, all of our clients, they allowed us to be one of the fastest growing companies in the United States. And so we got awarded for that. So the thing is about that is this: it's like you can still be winning, right? But better is better, right? So it's not simply just more is better. We're gonna for me, we talked to actually yesterday on the phone. And
it's funny. I do shit on CGN a lot, and it's because it's like.
Because you're just critical of your own baby.
Yeah, because I'm like, how do I get better? What do I do differently? Like, all that kind of stuff. But I do need to focus on like, hey, this stuff's pretty freaking good.
Yeah.
And here's a couple things that we're going to do to get better. But I do come in here, I'm like, man, this is the worst fucking company in the world.
No, but
yeah.
the thing is, I think it's because it's the commitment to make that decision for CGN to be the best decision someone makes in their company. So Jessica the other day mentioned to me, hey, she decided to go with another company and reached out to us and let us know some information. And I simply asked her, I said, well, hey, I get that, but at some point in the world, I know that she's going to be on CGN's team because we are committed to making this the best decision you make in your business. And so that's our goal. That's our mission because once again, we're not selling a lead. We're not selling a commodity service. We're legitimately establishing a relationship. And then we have to also educate ourselves, educate our clients, create those best environments for them. We have to invest in ourselves and go find out more information, find out what Google's doing on the back end, right? So, the whole notion that people have websites of, 10, 15, 30 pages and looking to build authority, well, we need to educate our clients and say, hey, your website has to be a living, breathing document. It's got to create, if you want to create authority online, you have to spread out your wingspan so that Google can see you as an authority. We're pushing heavily right now with video because we understand that that's a unique opportunity that our clients have to show authority, and we're really good at it. So it's like we have this, we're critical of CGM, but I love being critical of it because what comes from it is a even better product of a damn good product right now.
I will say the video aspect of stuff, and that was another thing that really hit me this week, was what we've been doing is we've been so cognizant of trying to make stuff as easy as possible for everybody. And we talked about this where we've said to former sales reps, hey, look, you don't need to work the weekends, you don't need to work nights, you just do what you do. But that's like the same thing as saying, look, you can lose weight, but you don't need to diet, you don't need to actually watch what you eat, you can do whatever. And yes, it feels good at first because you're like, oh my God, I get to lose weight, I don't have to diet, I don't have to track this stuff. But then you don't really lose the weight, or if you do, it's a slow, hey, yeah, last month I lost 1/10 of a pound. It's like, well, great, like that's cool, but like in reality, you probably would have liked to have had to diet and then lost 2 pounds. So that is something that it really hit me at this event, where it really comes down to sometimes it's not always the best thing to make it easy. The hard stuff is hard for a reason. Now, we're on that constant grind of how can we take the stuff that has to be done, non-negotiable, right? That's like, if you want to sell, you got to pick up the phone and call people, right? There's only a certain, there's limitations on the ability to sell without ever picking up the phone or talking to somebody like, oh yeah, I just want somebody, if I could have like a credit card portal on my website just for $100,000 like, remodel, like do it. Marketing, you guys can market that, right? And we're like, look, I'm sorry, like it's just not possible. It's not impossible, but the likelihood that that's going to happen is like next to none. Yep. So you're going to have to pick up the phone. But we're going to find out ways. What can we do? Maybe 100 grand is too much. Maybe it's more like 25 grand is that maximum that we want to hit. So it's identifying what are those things that 100% has to freaking happen. Meaning when you go out and you build a pond for somebody, you have to dig into the ground, right? There's no way around it. You have to do it. Now, you could find ways to make it faster, easier, more efficient, cheaper, whatever you want. But at the end of the day, you have to do that stuff. So that is really the whole game here, which is what are the things that without fail need to happen, but how can we make those things easier, quicker, faster, all that shit. So I loved that about this conference, and that's where the whole video stuff comes in, where it goes from, look, and if you guys have heard like the podcast that I talked about with my dad, because he and I mean, we started this journey together. Back in 2014, I didn't know anything about video. I had taken an iMovie class in high school, but I was like, screw it. I'll just start to do this. It's helping tell the stories of premier ponds to their clients. Like, maybe people will like it. I didn't know, but I thought if I make these videos and my dad, who hired me for marketing, sees them and likes them, well, I'm just making him happy. We have no idea if it's going to work, but we'll see. And it'll work like gangbusters. Well, we started to get away from that to tell people, well, you don't need video, you don't need this. But in reality, the video is the freaking thing that made it. The video, the blogs, like that kind of stuff is the thing that makes it.
Yeah, we tried to circumvent the video or make it into something else to, it's hard to tell, Jackie or Sam or whoever it may be. It's hard to tell somebody that hey, you got to create video. Well, because they're saying, hey, I don't know how to record stuff. So what we can do is instead of just, we know that the video is the meat and potatoes that we actually need. So let's create something around it that makes it, one, they got to do the hard stuff, but make it easier, make it shape the path for them in that way. And that's important. One thing that we haven't necessarily talked about just yet that I think that was super impactful at that conference was the idea of really taking a deep dive into like the lifetime value, the life value of your actual customer. That was super cool for me because.
What does that mean? What does lifetime value mean?
Just realistically, how much a customer is worth. If you acquire a customer coming in, what's the actual value of that customer? How much they're going to spend with you? And
so that's the layman's terms.
Yeah.
How much is somebody actually going to spend with you, right? Because most of us, including us, focus on let's get somebody to move forward. They move forward, we're done. There's a video that we put out on YouTube on Friday, and when we went up and visited Tribble, he said the same thing. The money is in the list. He's worked with probably at this point 13, 14, 15,000 people in Ann Arbor. Well, there's only so many people and so many houses that he can paint, but he already spent all this time and energy and effort to win somebody's business once. Why would he ever let them go to another painting company? And he knows every 5 to 7 years, they got to get this thing repainted. So having the ability to get somebody to buy again, right? We're not even talking about referrals here, but just getting somebody to buy again, whether it's the same product again, whether it's getting a different product. It's they bought a bathroom, now they're getting a kitchen.
Or upgrading on that product.
Yeah, exactly. It's essentially, how do we actually maximize the amount of money that this person spends with us?
And it was cool because they utilized a lot of common examples that we think about. Netflix. I think they asked and said, raise your hand if you bought Netflix one time and
for like 1 month.
For 1 month and you're done, right? And every person, no one raised their hand because they understood that they're going to be on there for a period of time. Same thing with Apple. We thought about, okay, yes, you might have an iPhone, but you also have subscriptions. You also have paid for iTunes at some point. You also have the the AirPods. You have the MacBook. You have all these other different products that Apple also has. So if you actually go back and add up the numbers, it's several of thousands of dollars that you spent with Apple. The most unique one that I was like, damn, this is actually pretty crazy. He talked about this. So like in the chat right now, you guys probably know that Disney has its fireworks every single night at 9 o'clock. All right, 9 o'clock. Hearing from you guys right now, why do you think Disney has their fireworks at 9 o'clock? I mean, you're walking through the park, you spend so much time, you're probably hot, you got kids. Why do they wait till 9 o'clock every single day to shoot off hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of fireworks every single day?
And while you guys are putting the answers in the chat, he said, look, the marketing department came up with this. The finance department probably freaking hated this at first.
Yep.
So when he was explaining the scenario, I was like, man, I wonder where he's going with this. So once he said it, it all makes sense. But what do y'all think? Does anybody have any idea why every single night Disney has fireworks to go? Ryan said, to keep people there till then. And the way that they broke it down was they said, look, you're in Florida. It's Orlando. We've all been there. We were there a month ago. It is hot. It is sticky. And when you have kids, I was a kid at one point in my life. I think Chris was as well. The afternoon heat is going to hit you. You were there all day. You're excited. And now you want to go home and go to bed. But like what Ryan said, it keeps you there because they're spending a lot of money. But if you're there from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., that's 6 hours. And then if you leave, you're gone. But if you're now there from 3 to 9 p.m., that's dinner. That's more snack. That's more suntan lotion. That's everything. Now they're keeping you around because there's a reason to stay there.
So they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars every single day. Every single day, because they understand that if I get somebody to stay that 5 o'clock hour, 6 o'clock hour, 7 o'clock hour, 8 o'clock hour, 9 o'clock hour, the amount of food, the amount of drinks, the amount of other entertainment, the amount of money that is spent surpasses the measly $100,000 that they have to spend on fireworks every single day.
So that overall, how much are they going to spend with you in the lifetime of them? This is something that we've done a lot with Premier Ponds. Because with Premier, their first service is like $1,200. Does it make sense for them? And let's say they do it, they have good margins. They're like a 60% margin, but just for sake of numbers, let's say 50%, they're going to profit $600. Well, it costs them like $1,000 for a lead or to acquire a customer, right? Or especially in the early days, that's what it was. Now with SEO, it's a hell of a lot cheaper, but in the early days, that's what it was. But they knew that once they could get somebody in the door, they had essentially like, at that time, like a 50% chance that that person was going to stay for and spend money every single year over and over and over. And then typically around like year 3, 4, or 5, they were going to do a pretty large upgrade. So they were spending $1,000 to lose $400, but that $1,200 total ticket ended up turning over the course of 10 years into like a $50,000 client. So then it became, they're spending $1,000 to make 50 grand. That's worth it. So what they brought up and what they discussed was, look, once you can figure out what is your average amount that people are going to spend with you, once you figure that out, it just becomes a math equation. And the company that is most willing to spend the most amount of time, energy, and resource to acquire a customer is the one that's going to win. So that's with us. Understanding, and we talked about that of, okay, cool. When we build a website for somebody, what can we do? Because we know if we do a good job on the marketing strategy, they're going to stay for a website. And if they do a website, they're going to stay for, it's hard to focus right now because there's a camera over here that has to get updated. And Mike doesn't want to go in front of this camera. And he's like,
crawling on the floor.
Army crawling on the floor to try to get it. Yeah, that was good. But I didn't expect for you to actually do it. I thought you were going to like duck walk your way across. But for us, I know if we do our marketing strategy correct, then that will flip over to the website. Then if we do the website correct, that will flip over to ongoing SEO. And if that works, it goes and goes and goes. So it's like, what can we do on that first piece where if they're going to spend $2,500 on a strategy, we give them the equivalent of $25,000 worth of value. on the website? Is it, if video is a thing, does it make sense for us to now fly out there and meet this person face to face and actually record and produce video, where that's gonna hurt our bottom line big time. But if we do that and they get bought into video and they go, I know this is the future, now I see it, and we can say, hey, by the way, this is how video is gonna play in your overall SEO strategy. By the way, guess who does SEO?
Yep.
We do. So if that means that we gotta spend money up front to then bring that person in, it becomes a math equation to know, okay, like with Tribble, like we flew up there for Tribble and did the video stuff for him. Now he paid for it, but we flew up there, we took the time, we took the energy, we did all that stuff, and now he's been with us for 3 years. Premier Pond, same thing. I mean, there's a lot of different instances of that where it comes down to, if we can keep somebody buying again and again and again and again, plus they refer us out, plus they do this, well, now that person becomes a several $100,000 client over the lifetime of it. Is that worth us spending extra money? Hell yes. But we have to know the numbers on the back end to make sure that we're not spending all this money for them to go, yeah, I'm good.
Yep. You got to have a good message, got to have a good product, have a good way to be able to clearly put it out there. But if you're able to really take care of people, I mean, that's why I'm so in love with this understanding of our commitment to make sure that every single person who says yes to CGN, that this is the best decision they made in their business. And so we have to be doing the things that we feel comfortable to be able to actually say that, right? So it is, it's a lot easier too when you think about it as a math equation versus thinking about taking the emotion out of the actual, this costs this amount of money situation.
Yep, so those are my big 2 things that I got from it, was the process and the positions over the people, and then understand your overall lifetime value of how much somebody's gonna spend with you year over year over year, and then figure out, okay, what are we willing to spend to bring somebody in, because we know that there's a X% chance they turn into this amount, and what are we willing to actually put up to make that happen?
One thing that stood out to me was this. If you think about we had somebody who came online who's been like viral, I guess, thousands of times. We had somebody who came on and spoke about direct mail, someone who came on and spoke about email marketing, someone who came on and just kind of spoke about overall like the business, and over and over and over again, they were raving about how they're able to do these things organically and not necessarily pay for ads in the traditional way, and how attribution was so hard to find right now. That was probably, to me, one of the things that I wouldn't say that was the biggest highlight, but that was a huge chunk that we had to think about, because it's all connected. Like when you had that whole graph of how Google was laid out, right? You have YouTube, you have analytics, you have Google Maps, you have Gmail. So Google is omnipresent, is everywhere. And so to be able to simply say attribution from this person came from this source, it's so hard because they're touched. What was the saying that traditionally marketers were saying someone had to be touched 7 times in order for them to become a lead? Now it's closer to 150, right?
I think it said 500.
Well, it's even more than 150, 500 times, because like the little individual touch points are happening throughout the entire, the internet, the offline, whatever it may be. Like, it was impactful to hear that, because it's, in order for you to win, it makes sense for you to diversify and make sure that it's not good enough just to have 50 reviews. You need to have 50 reviews, and it's not good enough for you just to have posting on Facebook. You need to have posting on Facebook, and it's not good enough for you just to have, some good referral partners. You need to have good referral partners, right? So it's really hard to, not just really hard, it's actually impossible to simply have the attribution from one source to another. But that was super impactful for me as well.
And the one thing that I thought was interesting, that even all these people that are ads people, a lot of them talked about just the desire to do content. Even the Google Ads guy that came up and said, this is the future of Google Ads, he was like, straight up, the websites with the most content on it are going to be the ones that are going to win, because it's going to be essentially, long story short, of what he talked about was, the way that Google's ad platform is going is Google's going to be able to target you in a different way that they haven't done before, where now you can plug certain things in and say, we want Google, we want you to figure it out. We want you have 2 million points of data on every single person out there. We want you to figure out what they're going to buy next. So for example, if they are driving to Chris is driving his daughter to daycare.
In a Kia.
Google's now going to go, well, Chris does this, every single day. Maybe what we should do is show them the ad for a different daycare that is good ratings or something like that.
Or maybe for Pampers or bottles, whatever it may be. So, because the thing is, I love the whole idea of someone is buying a house. Okay, someone's buying a house. Okay, great. At some point, 18 months from now, maybe looking to have a baby. After that, they're then they got to find a daycare. Then they got to find this and got to find this. They understand the actual pathway, human behavior.
So going back to the daycare aspect of it, what they were talking about was now that Google knows that stuff, they know the pathways. Now what they want to do is be able to find the different things on your website to send people over to. So if, for example, I'm a daycare and I go, hey, look, I Google, here's my money. I want you to find me more customers. They could go to the people that are buying a house, that just bought a house, and they say in 18 months, here's here's a daycare. If they're going to somewhere else, it's just getting smarter and smarter, but it comes down to the more specific of places that Google can send people to from an ad, the better off it's going to be. Now, that's what this guy talked about. He was really big on the attribution side, meaning, look, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how dialed in you are, it is impossible to actually piece together the exact thing that people did, because it's no longer those 7 touch points. It's no longer, hey, you called me from Yellow Pages and that was it. Now there's so many different interactions all the freaking time that there's no way to say this one thing got me in or this is the exact pathway, because you can't measure 500 different touch points successfully. So it was interesting. It's cool because it's now becoming a more holistic game where it's not enough to just do one thing. You have to be omnipresent, you have to do the right things, and you got to look at it holistically. And the last thing that they all talked about was Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah, with Google being the biggest player, you can't cheat the system.
There's no way around it.
Yeah, so there's no way of. You got to do the right stuff in order to get the right results.
Yep.
So that was pretty cool. I think that Jesse Itzler kind of stole the show in the very end of it all. He did something that I thought was pretty cool. He talked about his whole kind of life story and things like that. I know you had kind of knowledge of him beforehand, but there was a PR person who really talked about telling your story, and I think did an absolutely amazing job of doing that. I even looked over to you, and I think you talked about how we need to do a better job of telling our story. What did you take away from that specific conversation?
Just that. I mean, the stuff that makes you is unique. The people that we've had here that have more, you have more life experience. You were in the military. You were, Army Ranger, which is like a bigger ordeal. It's not just, big Army. You was a very elite group. You've traveled the entire world. So any client or any prospect that calls you up says, I live here or I'm from here, you essentially know something about that state that you can immediately build rapport with, because you either went there, you learned about it somehow. So just the life experience as a whole was big. And it makes sense why, a lot of these marketing companies out there, and us included, when you have a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, it's hard for them to connect with our prospect because they don't have all this life experience, right? So that's kind of the game here. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Did you feel like there was something that hit you in the gut, damn it, I'm not doing this, or
just when I'm home, be home. If I got nothing going on with Audrey, just make sure that, if I have nothing going on work-wise and I'm at home with Audrey, don't be on my phone. Be there with her. Because at the end of the day, CGN's not going to be standing by my deathbed. She will be. So it doesn't mean that I have to sacrifice everything and just always be with her. But it means that if I'm going to be there and I got nothing else going on, turn the TV off, talk with her, or if she wants to watch TV, put my phone down so at least we're engaging in the same thing. So I thought that was pretty good.
Do you want to explain this and this, or you want me to do it?
No, I mean, you got it.
Okay, so when Jesse Itzler was talking, he talked about how, he talked about his dad. all right, and his dad, I guess, had Alzheimer's, and I guess recently passed away as well. And he talked about how you have like the financial gain, all the things you're doing in life and in business to make more money. And then you have more of like your spiritual gain, right? The things that you like actually being a good person. And he talked about you could have all the money in the world, right? You could have $1 billion in this financial gain right here. But if you got zero right here on the spiritual, 1 billion times zero, you have zero. And so it was impactful because I think we all think about it. We all think like everyone there was like, has married themselves to the business, where it's like how the business goes, how their life goes. I think I said something to you that you brought up a couple times that I didn't think that was that impactful, but I don't drink that much. But when we were down there, we're talking heavily about stuff, and you're like, I was like, let's go grab, this is pretty heavy, let's go grab a drink.
Yeah, so this is what happened. So we were talking about the whole idea of positions and process over people. And we were talking about some tougher stuff, some deeper level stuff. And afterwards, Chris goes, let's go get a drink. I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, why is Chris getting a drink? Like, I've never seen him like suggest this. And I'm like, what is it? And you're like, dude, this is heavy. And I'm like, this is my life 24/7. I'm kind of glad that you now see it, because even before we went on this trip in the airport, Chris is, if you've ever talked to Chris, creates a lot of stimuli. Meaning, when you hang out with Chris, by the end of it, or at least for me, I'm exhausted. And there's certain times that when you call me, I'm like, I'm trying to wind down. And if I talk, like even yesterday, like you called me up, hey, let's take 10 minutes.
It took an hour.
It was an hour, right? And by the end of it, I was more frustrated because I was like, God, I didn't even think about all the stuff that he talked about. And then I spent the rest of the evening thinking about all that stuff. And with you on before the trip, I said, look, man, when you say like, hey, we should be doing these things at CGN, the way that I now hear that is, first off, I appreciate you pushing me, but at the same time, when you say we need to be doing these things, I immediately go into, okay, who on the team could do those things? And then by process of elimination, I go, well, that's a pretty big thing. To my knowledge, the only person that could do that is me. So when Chris says we need to do these things, what he really means is, Logan, you need to figure out a way to do these things for us. And that is exhausting, because then it goes down to, well, what else am I failing at? Is this the thing that I'm missing? So we had this discussion before the trip, which was helpful, because it was like, I don't think you don't mean to do it that way.
Yeah, but go ahead, I'll let you finish for a second.
You don't mean to do it that way, but that's just how I interpret it. So then when we're down there and we're having these conversations that are tougher conversations about what needs to happen, what needs to change, how are we doing things, and you're like, man, let's get a drink. And I'm like, dude, this is my life. Like, these things that even with Aaron this morning, like I was telling him about, like, look, like this is kind of how we're doing things. And he was like, man, that sounds like a tough job. And I was like, dude, it is. This is like a really freaking hard thing, that the upside is worth the downside, but goddamn, the downside, it's always there. When I lived in San Francisco, I had my desk in my bedroom. And when I would be in bed, I would look at my desk and go, man, I should be working right now, because it doesn't stop. There's always another post that you could put on Facebook. There's always another prospect that you could message again. There's always another you fill in the blank. And it doesn't stop. And that's the easy stuff. The hard stuff is, we talked about, who was I talking to somebody about this? We're talking about somebody else about letting people go. And they're like, yeah, like letting people go is hard. And I'm like, have you ever fired somebody and they like work at a corporate job and they're like, yeah, I've had to let people go. And I'm like, was it your decision to let them go? Well, no, it wasn't. I'm like, did the person think it was your decision? Well, no, they didn't. I'm like, okay, now imagine.
So you just deliver some bad news, that's it.
Yeah, your hands are tied, you just did the thing. I'm like, now imagine that you had to let that person go, and they knew that you were the one that had to make the decision, and it wasn't even like, hey, we have budget cuts, I'm sorry, I gotta let you go because you're failing. It's more like, straight up, man, we're doing okay, but you're just not really fitting the bill anymore, you're gone. That is the difference with all this stuff, especially like at this size, where it's like you have all the pressure, it doesn't turn off, it's this uphill battle that the way to lose is to quit. But for some people, in some instances, I'm a firm believer that you should. It's okay. It's not a bad thing, because there's a lot of things that I probably should have stopped a hell of a lot faster, but I learned the hard way.
Okay, so first thing I was going to say, I think when I was interrupting you, was one thing I find is that the vision thinking is, I'm like, I see something that has grand opportunity, that I'm like, this is like, we talked about data, we talked about flying up people's places, we've talked about all the different other things that have been, I think, the right message at the wrong time, right?
Yeah. So to give you an example, what Chris would do is Chris would say, hey, look, we need more data on our clients. I'm like, okay, what kind of data? Well, I don't know yet, just more data. And that is not as you guys know, if you have clients, just getting data on clients, you should have data on clients. How else are you going to know lifetime value? How else are you going to know where they came in? How else are you going to know what they rated you internally without collecting the data? But understanding what data needs to happen, how it happens, who does it, what's the timeline, what do you then do with the data? Because perfect, now you got data.
What are you going to do with it?
What happens next? Because if you get all this information and then you do nothing with it, what was the frickin' point? So a lot of times what Chris will do is he will say, we need this, we need that. And I'm like, yeah, we need it.
But I also will say that there's times in which I'm like, okay, I see it, and I'm like, hey, we need this because of these reasons, right? Right now, what is CG, like, what's CG,
I don't mean this as a negative. Just because like it's frustrating because it's like, yeah, I know we need it, but I appreciate it. So I'm not saying this as a negative.
Okay, and I appreciate that, but I know that too. But I think that it's like one of those things where I feel like I have a responsibility to continue to give those insights from my seat, but at the same time, I found like it's a lot easier to do it when I'm able to say, hey, Logan, I prepared this, take this on. Like on the plane ride home, I'm legitimately going through QuickBooks, writing down every single person's lifetime value. So if any person who's ever spent money with CGN, I probably wrote your name or your company down in the last 72 hours, going through and talk about every single person's lifetime value, because I understand what that does when I'm able to show it to you and say, look, did you know that Chris Treese has spent this much money with us, and like let's reward the situation in this way? Did you think about after this threshold, we need to do a better job of converting people past this, beyond this piece as well. So I feel like I have a responsibility to continue to push in that way. But the question I was going to ask you is, having the upside, feeling the lows, what allows for you to say, no, I'm not going to turn over and keep going? Because like the crazy thing is, once again, we talk so openly about the business stuff, and I think that it's really easy because both of us are wanting to be winners. So like we are able to be critical of ourselves, but like legitimately there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there who would want to be in our situation. With this company and the achievements that we have and are going to continue to have as well. So for you, knowing some of the opportunities that are out there, how do you keep, one, grounded in the idea that you are winning, and then two, what makes you keep going on tough days? I
don't always feel like I'm winning. I just don't like it. I'm like an eternal pessimist or something, which I don't think that's the case, because I do think as a whole, I'm going to 9 times out of 10 find why this will work, almost to a fault. But as we saw in the first part of this conversation, I'm hypercritical of this company. I'm hypercritical of myself. I'm hypercritical of just about everything.
Of Chris Livingston?
Of Chris. And realistically, the closer that you get to me, the more that I hang out with Chris. If you remember, I wasn't like, when you first joined here, I was just happy you're here. And now I'm like, hey man, I noticed that when you put notes in HubSpot, you missed a couple commas. Why not? Like, what happened? So it becomes this ongoing thing where it's humans in general. You think that all I need in life, I just need to find a wife that makes me happy. Then you find a wife that makes you happy, and guess what? You figure out, oh, well, now that I found a wife, let me find some other problem that happened. So I think humans in general, it never gets easier. You only get faster. So I'm always going to like the level of happiness or unhappiness or whatever you want to call it right now, I think we take this company to $100 million a year, I'm going to be in the exact same freaking position. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos sits back and goes, I'm done. Like, that's why they got to that point. And I'm not saying that's why I'm doing it, but I'm saying I don't think it goes away at all. Now, how do I keep going? It's two things. One, the game. It really is at the heart of it all. I truly look at life as it's a game. How well, and the game is just honestly not even playing the game. It's, can I separate myself from the situation to look at this as a game? Do I look at me having to let Chris go, or do I separate it and go, well, look, it's best for the company, so Chris needs to be let go. So that's part of it, is the game. The other side of this is what we do is such a needed thing. It is not leads, it is not tactics, it is at the heart of it all, and this is really what I kind of realized. We've been saying it, but it really hit me within the past couple weeks. What we do ourselves is we help educate clients and we help tell the stories of ourselves, our clients, things like that. And it's the same thing that we help other people do. Because if, for example, somebody feels like, for me, like I didn't feel like I was cool in high school, right? Somebody else from high school may have a different boat or a different situation. My buddy Malcolm, who was cool, who used to live in Charlotte that Chris knows, will tell you Logan wasn't cool. So he will say that, but at the end of the day, I didn't feel cool, whether Malcolm also agrees that I wasn't cool. So now I'm going to spend the rest of my freaking life trying to get my voice out there to be accepted by people. So how do I do that? That's why I post online. That's why a lot of this business stuff is here, and having the ability and the confidence to get on video and talk about my backstory and talk about what we're doing. That to me is like, okay, people are watching. I'm being accepted, right? But a lot of people don't get that because a lot of people don't put themselves in situations to be heard. I really believe everybody's got a cool and unique story, right? Some are, it's all at scale. Chris has traveled the whole world by himself. He's done several deployments overseas. He was an Army Ranger. You guys don't know this, he got kicked out of college, right? And he had to fight his way back. Chris used to sleep on my couch. Like, that is a story worth telling. Somebody else didn't have that. They had a more moderate life, but the story is all relative because somebody who doesn't care for chaos would hear Chris's story and go, I never want to hear that again. But somebody who loves moderation is going to hear somebody else's story and go, that's great. But having the ability and the chance to tell that story and put yourself out there, like, I mean, you think about this when people are like, it's like the 5 things of like dying, like what do they do? And it's always comes down to, I wish I would have loved more. I wish I would have slowed down and cherished things. Another thing they always talk about is, I wish I had more confidence to be myself. And that is what I like about all of this. That's why I love the video stuff, because it gives people that we work with that are willing to do it, the ability to put themselves out there and actually say what's on their mind. Because that, to me, is the ability to actually step into your own confidence and not care as much about what people think about you, which is what I think we're all actually seeking for in life. So that's what I love about it. So that's why I like what we do, because we help give people that voice. They may not view it that way, but god damn, I remember the first time I posted on Facebook something sentimental about the business, thinking, man, the kids from high school are gonna probably wreck me on this one, but fuck it, I don't care. And then I posted it and it was all about my dad. And I was like, man, they're gonna think I'm a wimp. And it was like a bunch of comments like, hey, this is so cool. Like, it was the opposite. And I was like, all right, maybe I'm onto something here that now I'm cool again, right? Like that kind of stuff. So it'll unlocks something that gives people purpose. That's what I think this business does. Yes, I'm married to the business, and I get that, but it also does a lot for me personally, and that's why my emotions are tied in it. That's why I'm always trying to find things to get better. That's why I go to the gym every morning, because I want to get better myself, right? Because I'm not out here just eating cheeseburgers or not working out. I need to get better, and that's the same thing with the business. So when it comes to being in shape, I don't think I'm, because you're always, it's called like chasing your pump. right? You're in great shape, you look in the mirror, you're happy, and then you go work out and you come in and you're a little bit bigger, a little bit skinnier, a little bit tighter, and you're like, that's what I want to look like. Let me work a little bit harder to get to that point. Then you finally get to that point, and then what happens?
Keep on going.
You get another pump, you got to get back in that zone, and it just keeps going and going and going. So for me, I like the game of it because it's interesting to be able to gamify it as best as I can, but I love what it does for me and what it does for other people, because that's why I'm so big on the video stuff. That's what I got.
And if you care to hear, when I hear you say that, it's cool because your why and your reasoning is uberly different than mine, but it's still on the same track. Because when I think about this stuff, it's like I get to see what Logan is, what I am, what other people are right now as a byproduct of having present parents. I also get to see, like, when I first entered this industry, I mean, we talked to probably 3 or 4 other marketing agency owners, and they were very much some of them were in the home improvement space as well. And they talked about, gosh, like, many of the clients they have are like, in a really bad way, right? In a really bad spot.
They fucking hated it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's crazy to think about that. And I love our clients. I love them so much because I think, realistically, I think back to, like, I know who Frank Winter is, and I know his son, Reese. I know who Bob Adams is, and I know his kid, RJ. Like, I think in that way, right? So because I really do believe that the energy, effort, that things are doing right now affects those people. Affects little RJ being able to grow up and do what he wants to do in life. I brag all the time about you and say, hey, Steve's got 4 kids, 4 D1 athletes. One of them is just living her life to her fullest, being her best self. You own this business. You are Inc. 5000 and being able to do this right now and be able to grow fast in this company and helping out so many people as well. You got a brother who's one of the best pilots in the actual damn Navy. You got another brother who could have easily taken on your dad's company, but decided he's going to do it on his own and is killing it out here. The kid's under 27, I don't know how, 25 years old, and he's running his own business and that's a byproduct of what Keller and Steve put together and what they presented to you guys. Like, to hear, okay, hey, when we were growing up, there was a time when, at a certain age, we went on a family vacation with just dad. And at a certain age, we went on a family vacation with just mom. Being able, like, those things are the byproduct of being able to have a healthy business that makes money and is profitable, that you're able to spend time with your kids. So when I think about that, that's really what it is for me, because I truly, traveling around the world, what that did for me was that made me see that legitimately we're all the same. If I grew up in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and someone's family and household, I would turn out to be that person. If I grew up in Istanbul, Turkey, I would turn out to be that person. If I grew up in Chiang Mai, Thailand, I would grow up and be that person. I'm who I am is by byproduct of, like, where I'm at and who surrounded me with love and the circumstances that I went through. And so knowing that, there's no way I could ever in my mind see myself as better than anybody else. I think that we can perform better than other people in certain aspects of life and how we want to gauge it, but no one is innately better than anybody. So I'm thinking to myself, like, if we're all going to be that way, then people in this vein deserve to also have prosperous lives and awesome relationships with their kids and all those amazing things, And so that to me is easily my why. Is easily why it's like, hey, you know what? I want to make sure that Reese's father is able to go to his freaking soccer practices. How does that happen? By having a healthy run business. So it's cool how we have totally different whys in some ways, but it all goes down the same path. So it's pretty cool.
Cool. Love it. We good?
We good.
All right, guys. That's all we got tonight. We'll see you next time.